What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special. While there hasn't been very much in the mainstream press recently about the Chinese housing collapse or the Evergrande crisis, it seems the LinkedIn page for Dr. Marco Metzler, the head analyst at German firm DMSA, has been a goldmine of updates on Evergrande and the Chinese housing collapse. And also, it looks like Fantasia Holdings is officially the first developer to be hauled into court, as a winding up petition was just filed by one of its creditors, making it the first Chinese developer to officially enter into bankruptcy proceedings. You ready? Hit it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Gamble, and I'm Nobody Special. And there hasn't been a lot in the press lately about the Evergrande collapse, even though there's been plenty going on behind the scenes. Now, if you recall from this video I did a few weeks ago, it's really unclear whether or not Evergrande has made some of these bond interest payments, as the press has been claiming they did. And in that video, I went into detail about how there really is just no proof, no evidence anywhere that they've actually made these payments, and that there's plenty of reasons why some of these organizations might withhold that information or even outright lie about it in order to cover their butts. Now, this whole time, there has been one individual in the whole world, Dr. Marco Metzler from German firm DMSA, who's been calling Evergrande out on this. And he went so far as to buy the bonds himself to prove that these interest payments weren't being made. Now, he insists the payments haven't been made, and he says he is about to initiate legal proceedings against the company to force that into the public light. Now, before we get too far into this, guys, I have to ask, could you please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell? It really helps me out. It helps me to keep this channel growing. And with that, it is time to shrink my big, fat melon of a head and get into this. And this is the LinkedIn page for Dr. Marco Metzler. And there he is right there, sitting at a restaurant in the Cayman Islands. Now, what is he doing in the Cayman Islands, you might ask? Well, let's get into the post and see. And this is 4 days ago. Dr. Metzler says, insolvency petition on Evergrande will be submitted soon. Bankruptcy is a matter of days. Michael Uwe, managing director of DMSA, and I are currently in the Cayman Islands in preparation of our bankruptcy proceedings against Evergrande Group, which is registered as a company in the Cayman Islands. So that's why he's in the Caymans, because that is where Evergrande is registered. We had some meetings with lawyers on the island since Monday and have given yesterday a mandate to a law firm to file the bankruptcy proceedings against Evergrande. We will submit the petition to court in the coming days. Once the insolvency petition has been filed and accepted by the court, an insolvency administrator will begin winding up the group and liquidate assets for investors and creditors. Meanwhile, the share and bond prices will fall to near zero, and the fire sales starting from filing date the petition can be reversed later. The recovery analysis of Fitch Ratings, his former employer, and one of the big three rating agencies, assumes that Evergrande would be liquidated with a recovery rate of only 0 to 10%. He goes on to talk about the global implications of an Evergrande bankruptcy. Now, that's not the only recent update we've had on Dr. Metzler's LinkedIn. We also have this. Now, here's Dr. Metzler with a convenient photo op in front of the courthouse in the Cayman Islands, with his matching Hawaiian shirt and hat. Seems like they're really enjoying their trip there. I couldn't help but think when I saw this picture of Dotson, we got Dotson over here. See, nobody cares, right? That scene right out of Jurassic Park. But I digress. So reading on here in this post, this is 2 days ago, he said the best thing for Evergrande shareholders would be the directors of the group would now actively file for bankruptcy as soon as possible. He's suggesting Evergrande do this on their own, not be forced to by him. If not, the proceedings will now be officially initiated by our lawyers this week in the Cayman Islands. All right, so he is saying the paperwork will be filed this week. He's previously said in a matter of days they would start the paperwork, but now he is saying this week. So to me, that says sometime between now and Friday. The restructuring of Luckin Coffee, a Chinese coffee chain whose holding company is based in the Cayman Islands and which had filed for bankruptcy in 2021, could serve as a signpost for Evergrande Group to actively file for bankruptcy itself. By having the holding company in the Cayman Islands, it allows access to local restructuring procedures. This involves appointing provisional liquidators to work with the current management team to reach a settlement with creditors. During this phase, Evergrande can benefit from a stay of litigation if it seeks to work out a settlement with creditors where 50% of creditors agree in number and 75% in value. Now, here's where this post gets interesting. He says, as previously reported, we are still waiting for an official statement from Clearstream on the status of the interest payments to us through our custodian bank, Six. We have received from Clearstream so far that we have publicly posted on LinkedIn. Dr. Metzler, transparency is one of our core values and of utmost importance to us. Please note that Clearstream, in our role as ICSD, only releases funds to bondholders based on an order from the paying agent and actual receipt of funds from upstream intermediaries. So this is some wishy-washy language from Clearstream here. They're not saying outright that they haven't been paid, but they're saying the only time we release payment is when we get paid ourselves and we're ordered to release the funds by the paying agent. So they're almost suggesting that that hasn't happened. Now, the reason I mentioned Clearstream and why this is important is you may recall from this article, and this is a few weeks ago, November 10th, Evergrande faces default deadline on $148 million payment, but some bondholders were paid according to a report. Now, you may recall some of my videos ranting about these anonymously sourced, citing people familiar with the matter, no name, no citation, no sources, articles about Evergrande making these payments. Well, the closest thing to an actual source that we got in any of these articles suggesting that Evergrande actually made any of these interest payments came from a Clearstream spokesperson. And I'll read you a little bit from this just to refresh your memory on November 10th. Cash-strapped China Evergrande Group, facing a deadline for coupon payments on Wednesday, may have made those payments, according to a report by Bloomberg, which said that customers of international clearing firm Clearstream have received overdue payments on 3 U.S. dollar bonds. Now, later on in the article, it mentions that customers of Clearstream received overdue payments on 3 U.S. dollar bonds, quoting a spokesperson for Clearstream and citing bondholders of 2 of the bonds saying they received payments. All right, so they're quoting a Clearstream spokesperson, no name. We don't know who this Clearstream spokesperson was, but this person representing the company said, oh, yeah, the bond payments were made. Well, contrast that with what Dr. Metzler is talking about here, with Clearstream saying, please note, in our role as ICSD, we only release funds to bondholders based on an order from the paying agent and actual receipt of funds from upstream intermediaries. Now, Dr. Metzler has been very vocal on LinkedIn, basically calling out Clearstream, in particular their CEO, to clarify their statements. Has the payment been made or not? Well, a few days ago, we got this statement. Now, this is Dr. Berthold Crack. All right. Dr. Berthold Crack, the CEO of Clearstream, which is the German clearing firm that supposedly facilitated these payments on the Evergrande bonds. Now, this is a week ago, and he wrote, recent developments have fueled discussions about transparency on interest payments and the role of Clearstream in this entire process. To be clear, Clearstream is an intermediary. Our customers are financial institutions only, with which we maintain very transparent and trustful relationships, which means that any individual, aka Dr. Metzler, who has a question about the current status of, e.g., a payment or another type of corporate action, should always reach out to the bank which manages their portfolio. Now, that's interesting. So we've gone from Clearstream having a company spokesman tell the press, oh, yeah, Evergrande made their payments, to now all of a sudden their CEO is saying, we don't deal with individuals, only financial institutions. And if anybody has a question, they should reach out to their bank. So what changed? Why this evolution of their policy on what they will or won't talk about? Why will a company spokesperson insist that a payment was made to the press, who is not a financial institution or not a bank, and yet when one of the bondholders asks the question, they say, you need to take that up with your bank? That's interesting. So I'm very curious, Clearstream. Why has your position shifted so much? Why have you gone from you will anonymously allow your spokesperson to go over to Bloomberg and say, sure, these payments made, and now they're being awful careful what comes out of their bird crack? Well, we may find out over the next few days, because Dr. Metzler says he has engaged with counsel in the Cayman Islands and that this week the official paperwork will be filed. So I'll be keeping an eye on this story. And if we get confirmation that this paperwork has been filed and that proceedings have been initiated, we will bring that information to you as soon as it happens. Now, this is not the only recent development in this Chinese housing collapse. I would also mention this post, and this is from yesterday. Dr. Metzler saying Fantasia Holdings is now the first to be liquidated. Chinese real estate developer Fantasia, which failed to repay $206 million worth of bonds last month, has now announced that one of its key subsidiaries has received a winding up petition. And if you're not familiar with a winding up petition, that is basically someone, a creditor, filing with the court to force the liquidation of the company's assets so that they can get the money that they're owed. So this is the beginnings of bankruptcy proceedings against Fantasia. On November 24th, 2021, the petition was filed against Fantasia Investment Holding Company Limited, a major subsidiary of the company, in connection with credit facilities with an alleged outstanding principal balance of $149 million that Fantasia Investment guaranteed. As this constitutes an event of default in all bond terms, all international bondholders may now file a bankruptcy petition against Fantasia. Now, Dr. Metzler goes on to mention that a similar case is also currently underway against Evergrande, with Shanghai Trend Zone Holding filing a lawsuit against Evergrande in mainland China. The insolvency proceedings will now follow from our lawyers in the Cayman Islands. I looked all over the interwebs and I could find no information to back up what Dr. Metzler is saying here about Shanghai Trend Zone Holding. I couldn't find that anywhere. So this is the first I've heard of this information. If you guys know of anything about this Shanghai Trend Zone Holding filing a suit against Evergrande, please feel free to email me or let me know in the comments down below, because that's big news and you would think that would have got some attention in the press. I've heard nothing about that. So that's interesting. However, I was able to confirm through other links that this winding up petition against Fantasia had in fact been filed. And here we go in capital.com. Chinese property developer Fantasia Holdings, which last month failed to pay $206 million bonds, said that one of its main subsidiaries had received a winding up petition. The petition was related to loans guaranteed by subsidiary Fantasia Investment Holdings, the company said in exchange filing. Goes on to say the company will seek legal advice to protect its legal rights and interests and take all necessary measures, including maintaining a constructive dialogue with the petitioner to address the matter, Fantasia Holdings said. And I would also add that trading in Fantasia stock has also been suspended. So it looks like Fantasia is the first to go down officially and enter into bankruptcy liquidation proceedings. Now, there's one thing I'll add. What's going on right now, and Dr. Metzler mentioned this a few times in some of his articles, is that Evergrande is selling off its assets like crazy. They are selling corporate jets. They're selling yachts. They're spinning off divisions. They're selling their stakes in banks, right? And they're selling them for pennies on the dollar, desperately trying to raise cash. Now, what Dr. Metzler is saying is that this behavior and the mass liquidation of assets at below market value constitutes a default by itself, and that the company needs to stop doing that because there is no control. There is nobody representing the interests of the creditors or the bondholders in making sure Evergrande gets enough money for these assets before they sell them. So Dr. Metzler has mentioned in a lot of his LinkedIn posts, and I think his legal filings will reflect this, that the company has de facto defaulted just through its behavior and its reckless liquidation of assets. So that's another interesting thread to keep an eye on as this story develops. So long story short, Dr. Metzler says this week we will see paperwork filed in court in the Cayman Islands, that he's already engaged counsel to do this, and that we should hear about it within the next few days. And we've also got some very wishy-washy statements coming out of Mr. Berthol Crack over at Clearstream that kind of walks back their previous statement that the payments had been made. So there have been some very interesting developments in this Evergrande crisis over the last few days, even though the press is still saying almost nothing about this story. And one wonders, a story this important and this big, with so much potential bank exposure and derivatives risk and counterparty risk that's out there, why are they being so hush-hush about this? Keep that in mind every time there's one of these circuses going on in the press, some trial, some verdict, some case, fighting over some stupid policy or some actor getting canceled or he said this or he said that. Keep in mind the press is not talking about the biggest stories in the world right now, the collapse of the Chinese housing market. They have nothing to say about that. That's interesting. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for you on this one. I want to thank you for your time for watching this video. Don't forget, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell. It really helps me out, and I'd be forever in your debt. Until next time, live small and dream big.